Greetings, sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. This is Body-Culinary, and this evening I wanted to come in and just check in with you folks. It's been a minute since I've been on. I've been having my shoulder after an accident. And I was just thinking as I was moving around today in the food prep area, and it's getting late, I thought about something that might be helpful for folks. So that is, eating late at night, binge eating. One people, one that's one way of referring to it. Another way of thinking about it, perhaps, is just eating very mindlessly, and that's something that I cover a lot in my practice of working with folks when it comes to whole foods, living foods, nutrition, as well as personal training. So, if you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm Body Culinary chef, personal trainer, natural born woman, mom, and a love of all things natural. I'm also one of those folks that popped out onto this 3D plane with very fine, kinky, cottony hair. Very fine hair. So I was also going to share with you my quickie style for today. So if you're one of those folks that's ever had, felt like I don't know what the heck to do with my hair. I don't want to use a whole lot of products. I really want to learn to work with what I've got. That's what I do over here, radical self-acceptance. So firstly, my quickie style of today. So if you have very fine hair, quite often you see all kinds of beautiful twists and buns, and your hair may not be very dense. So a lot of times you copy the styles and they just don't come out. I'm looking a certain kind of way. So in what I call radical self-acceptance and working with what you've got, I have a tendency to be very creative. So I'm not twisting. I don't twist my hair at all. I don't put any kind of gel. I don't have any kind of products, and I'm not slicking anything, right? Because my hair, first of all, can't take it, and any kind of pulling hurts. So rather than do a big, long, drawn-out thing, today I have a bun. It's very loose, and there's no pulling at all on my scalp. And I have a tendency to make styles that are complementary for very fine hair. So a lot of the styles that I do now, I would do the same style when I was a loose natural. So I'm embracing the frizz and the afro, the cottony afro. That's what it is, right? It has a tendency to look full or thicker when it is natural and it's not twisted. Also, for hair that's very delicate, I'm not twisting to death, which would actually pull this out. And another thing for those folks that are not using a bunch of oil or products, sometimes you can't see it, but actually when our hair is very clean without products, it actually has a sheen to it. So it's very clean because I don't put any hair. So this may fly in the face of what some other folks are doing, but I have found I have no dandruff and my scalp feels fantastic with no oil and no grease. So it's dandruff free. There's no itching because I can't take an itchy scalp, and it actually has a sheen. But because of the texture of cotton doesn't look like it has sheen. This is just what the hair is. So I'm keeping it simple over here. So if this was still loose, if my hair hadn't locked, I didn't intend for it to lock. It locked in my travels and I decided to stop fighting it. This would be loose double strand twist, very loose. So the longer I went with the double strand twist, the looser and the looser the twist got. Why? Because of my hair is so fine, very prone to tangling, lots of knots. So even if I look at the hair that's on the side, a lot of times the little pieces over here, they'll get like into little, what they call beady beads. Some people call them kitchens. It just tangles very easily. So in detangling my hair, quite often I would lose a lot of hair. And right before my hair locked up as I was traveling, I didn't have any products. When I say any products, nothing. Quite often I didn't even have any oil, right? I just had some natural water from a stream / creek that I was bathing in. And my skin and hair felt fantastic. Like when I talk about like no products, I had water on my skin as somebody that had a lot of acne, and my skin never felt better. So what I hear a lot of people saying about detox, I experienced that on my own by not having any products on my hair. And I would say long term, well over a decade of living foods, my skin changed, and I'm very hydrated from the inside. I'm not eating any kind of cooked fats. It's rare that I would use oil. And if I did, it would be cold pressed coconut oil or something like that. A lot of times the oil was pressed fresh. So if you're doing that long term, your body will shift. So a lot of times I'm lubricated from the inside, I'm hydrated from the inside. That made a difference. Also, somebody that's very physically active, then all that nutrition is circulating to my scalp. So those are that's a lifestyle. Those are practices. Those are things to a certain degree I don't have to think about so much, and it's consistent. So a lot of times when we're following things on YouTube, or we're following other people's quote unquote lifestyle, we may dip in and out for 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. But doing something for 2 weeks, several days, inconsistently is not the same thing as 2 years consistently, 10 years, 11 years. So that's a big difference. Those little nuances can make a big difference, right? Also, it's only in the last 2 years that I've even used any kind of natural shampoo in my hair. Before that, literally everything that I eat, that I pay for by the case from my food, is what I put on my hair and skin. That's what cleared up my acne. And even on whole living foods, if I overeat or binge, or if my foods are wrong combinations, rather than be like, oh my gosh, freaking out, I have found that it's very helpful to come from the perspective that your skin, your hair, your body, your organs are communicating with you. So rather than fighting to erase it and scrape it off and scrub it off, if we slow down and listen, the body's communicating all the time. So when I do get a pimple or something, which is rare, I can track exactly where it's coming from in terms of sleep, too much nuts if they're even raw nuts, or if I'm not digesting or processing the food. So it's actually simple, but I think perhaps we're moving at such a pace, we're not this cognitive dissonance based on we're moving too fast and we're not in the process. So we're not really understanding, or we're not being patient to see what is working. Our body's working in cycles. So if I try something, a little dip or dab here and there, or a glass of water, that's not the same thing as having lots of fresh living water in my food, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'm just going to deconstruct this style. So I just added this, as you may know with my last couple of videos. Something I found that works with my hair is gold cord. I love gold cord. So being that I'm not using a bunch of oil and gels, how can I work with my hair to make it feel royal, dressed up? I like kind of what I call my personal style sensual, functional, more so than sexy. That's kind of another energy. Sensual to me, that fits, that works for me. And then also functional. Too much pulling when I'm going to do exercise or lay on the floor, everything has to work for me. So I'm not a person that prefers a lot of makeup. From every now and then I'll play with some eyeliner or some mascara, even glitter. I like glitter, but I want to sweat and be out in the garden, so it doesn't work for me. What works for me? Gold cord, little bracelets, functional jewelry, and my waist beads. That works for me. That's beautification. Maybe I'll change my earrings up, but I need things I can drop and go. I was just, trimming some trees, some banana trees, and then I'm in the garden, and I need to be sensual and functional. So gold cord is something I find works for me because I don't have to, my hair is all grown and flat, and I'm not twisting it down to the root. I've even tried before African threading, which is something my Southern great grandma had us do with our hair, which is interesting, these Afro traditions. And a lot of times we see on the continent also, the old school women from the South, they would twist it as a protective style all the way down to the root. So that to me is like a haircut. That would also make my locks very compact. So I don't do that. And this is actually very, very loose, right? So this was just something I added. This was 2 locks. Many of mine are combined. So you see, I'm just going to break it down. So this is like a puff, but I'm going to deconstruct the puff because it's not full. I'm making it look full. So this was just a little something that I added. You see how easy that came out? My hair is very prone to ripping and breaking. So we're not going to do all that. This is light, no pulling, right? So having accessories that don't jack our hair up, that's a good thing. And hopefully, pause, I hope you have your water in a wine glass. Help slow you down. Okay. So this was another set Usually I don't like a lot of hairpins, but you know, to achieve a certain look, I'll take a trade-off because I'm not using gel. So I will use hairpins, sometimes very loosely placed, because I can't take laying on the floor. I lay on the floor a lot, do stretching and exercise. So these are my 2 locks here. And if your stuff is not twisted, you know, it's a certain kind of way. My hair's not dense, so this is like 4 little teeny locks, right? It's not dense combined, so I'm not slicking it. So all I did, these were the 2 that were hanging. I decided to take this one and pin. This one I had it loose, and then also I could also take and wrap this one around, right? So you have options, right? So now here's the bun. The bun, and this is what I did with my hair when it was loose natural. I would take a very, very loose hair holder, and I would divide it up, usually in odd numbers, into loose double strand twists. And I would simply take the loose double strand twists and I would wrap them around. That's one of my favorite ways to wear my hair is in buns. And you can take a loose rubber band, maybe not tight, and put it at the end just to kind of hold these together. So this was like 1 twist, and I used hairpins, a combination of this and that to pin them. So I'm just deconstructing it for you. So this was like 1 of those little twists. This was like 2. Right? This is 3 and 4. So if you look at, I work backwards. So if you see, this is so loose, right? For you tender-headed people, and also if you don't want a whole bunch of indentations in your locks. So usually it's like 3 or 4. It's actually not a lot, right? And so all I did was simply take them, right, and place them with the hairpin, right? And then you can mold and you can tuck them in. That's all I did to achieve that look. But there's no pulling, no slicking, anything. Also, if you have hair that's sticking out, I'm totally deconstructing it. You can go back to the beginning. So I'm going to take it out. So look how this was loosely placed on there. Again, if you might have very delicate hair, it cannot take being mishandled or overhandled. So this was so loose on here, right? And actually, there are 2 different types of these little rubber bands. There's another type that's not shiny like this. I noticed the other one, if you put oil in your hair or if you're out in the hot sun, those, oops, that one, see how loose that is? Easy to pop. These rubber bands will melt into your hair. I've had, and when I used to use a lot of oil, I've had the coconut oil or even the heat of the sun melt the rubber band into your hair. That's too much. That's hair trauma. I can't, that's too much for me. Psychologically, I can't. So again, this was so loosely placed around. I didn't even wrap this twice. So this is sliding right off, and I don't want to make any type of indentations. It's also very hot here, so I don't want the hair, even though I don't have a whole bunch of hair, but it's got a little bit of length on it, and when it's on my neck, I feel like I have carpet on it. So this is where I started out from, right? So if I wanted to make it more jazzy, snazzy, I can put those loose twists, and I can simply arrange. So look how, you know, we have to find styles that complement our hair. And so before that, I just started out right here. And again, being that I'm not using any kind of styling gel, I can take a little hairpin. If I should use a hairpin on the side, being I'm not slicking it down, instead of placing the hairpins horizontal, I will take the hairpin and put it up vertical. So that way I don't have to use a whole bunch of styling gel, because this is fine hair. It's like a sieve and like carpet. So like imagine if you're putting oil and grease and all kind of stuff inside the carpet, all of it's going to become embedded inside of the carpet. So I just had a little bit of hairpins in there, and that's it. And then in the evening, even though I don't tie my hair up all the time, I do have to say putting a little silky scarf on or a head cover, my hair feels more conditioned. Somehow it's not drying out. So I don't know that it moisturizes more than not drying out. So usually I will spray my hair with water. So this is how I started out, and I made it into a bun. So if you're not doing a whole bunch of stuff to your hair, and not for nothing, you know, whoever knew that somebody with very, very fine hair can get a lion's mane? I love the look of those big chunky locks, but that's just not my hair. So what we can do is find little things to accent our hair. I'm not into the whole coloring thing because that's just too much. Greetings, greetings. So this was just something that I tied in here. And like, I think the little gold kind of dresses the hair up. So that's it pretty much. That's it. And so I'm not slicking this back. If I pull this back, and our hair is just different. Yeah, everybody's hair is just different. So usually if I put it up, this is what it's looking like. So some people might not like this. This is the hair that I've got. So I'm working with what I've got. So just my take home is whatever you can do to find stuff, to be creative, so that you can feel that your hair is attractive to you when you look in the mirror. And then also it's functional. To me, it needs to be functional for movement. It can't be too much drama. I'm not spending 20 hours. That's not going to work for me. I have other stuff to do. So that's the Quickie style. Now, the other thing, and I'm going to throw this up really quick because I just wanted to go over something, and that is binging / late night eating. And I think maybe a really nice, effective way to word it, because I think it's very important, not lying to ourselves, but framing a narrative in a way where we're not shaming ourselves. Quite often, I'm going to just tell you, somebody that's competed in fitness, been in fitness, big time foodie, professional chef, Caribbean, Southern background, somebody that likes to eat, right? There are certain habits that undo a lot of the things that we're working for. And so I'm also a food scientist and a fitness scientist per se. A lot of times we're undoing a lot of our efforts. If you're doing cardio or you've gotten into fitness, and I'll just keep it real with you. A lot of times I would see women in the gym on one of my favorite pieces of equipment, the stair mill. And that sucker is challenging, hard, if you will. And you can burn a whole lot of calories. You can obtain a lot of fitness on that thing. Also, I like to be dependent and independent in my own home so that I don't need a gym. So if you go get on this thing and some people say it's torture, you go exert all of this energy, or you get excited, you start hill walking or you start bicycling, and not just for leisure, when you really get into, as your body gets more conditioned and you start to enjoy the challenge more. Many people may not understand that little thing in your cup holder, that mocha loca latte with all that milk and all that syrup, or even if it's the sucralose or the artificial sweeteners that are 0 calories, a lot of times you're undoing a lot of your efforts. And you can literally be drinking back what you just so-called burned off in terms of fuel, right? There's some distinctions with fitness. And a lot of this we go over in the lunchtime classes: efficient fitness and common sense nutrition. A lot of times we'll give up because we're just not understanding the science. And most people do not like to do a food journal, do not like to count or use a scale. But there's a reason why the scientists have printed the books, because they have done the science and the measurements. And so although these things are relative, you don't have any way to measure your progress. So you're constantly guessing. And if you're guessing about what you're doing, a lot of times you get disheartened, or you give up, or you don't realize that you have certain habits, you have blind spots, that you're undoing a lot of the progress that you want to see. For example, if you're eating 10 avocados and it's raw, it's good fat, but it's still too many calories. So too much fuel is too much fuel. And if you're looking to create a slight deficit in your fuel so that you can access the onboard, the extra stuff that you have, on your body. So that being said, usually now if we get to our food personality and your flavor palette, this is something I've noticed many of us may not acknowledge. If you're stressed, which most of us are experiencing stress all the time. If you're experiencing stress, which we are, and you're in front of these screens, you're likely overeating. More so than just overeating, you're mindlessly eating. So you may not be aware that you have just taken in enough fuel for several people, right? You may not be aware that you're not burning what you think you're burning from your fuel tank. And you may have an extra fuel tank. And I love thinking in pictures. You may have this fuel tank, and this fuel tank, let's say, has super Gatorade, or I don't know use all these names, but these drinks, right? The bowls, the so-and-so bowls, or protein drinks, fuel replacement, meal replacement drinks. And a lot of times as women, we're looking at advertisements, and usually the bodybuilding mindset is the normal program that people have, right? And when it comes to fitness, right? If you're not a bodybuilder and you're taking a meal replacement in a glass, you have so much fuel in one little glass. Now you're trying to create a deficit. So if you have no idea of how much you're burning, you may be looking at the infomercial and think you're burning 600 calories or 600 units of energy, right? You may actually only be burning 150 or 125 based on tightness, stiffness, or being deconditioned, right? And you may, with this meal replacement, right? And the meal replacement for the big bodybuilding men is meant to help them take on more calories so they can get more mass, more muscle. Have you ever seen those Flex Wheeler and Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler, right? And these big bodybuilders. So they're looking massive, almost kind of like if I think, if I go by some of the farms, if you've ever seen bison or if you've ever seen big horses in their muscles or like massive animals, that's a lot of calories. And that particular sport specificity training, their sport is for them to get as massive as possible and stand there and pose, right? So, but that's not the average person and that's not the average woman. But the average man is thinking, I want a big chest, you know, so they're overcompensating or they're trying to go for a look, which is not even necessarily functional. So I'm just saying all of this to just make a distinction. If you have these blind spots, you may not realize that in one little glass that you're drinking enough fuel in terms of calories, right? In terms of your gas tank. And you just, not only did you get rid of the deficit, now you're putting in more, right? And then if you have, you know, these chemicalized protein powder meal replacements, a lot of times it doesn't have any life force in it. It's not cleansing. It's highly processed. It's not necessarily giving you pretty skin, right? So we're looking at quality, which is usually why I love living water that's nice and moist and wet like your skin. So we're just making that. So what can you do? Let's just keep it simple, right? What can you have in the evening? Keeping in mind that usually with these screens, hint, hint, water. Usually when you're in front of these screens, the brain is processing all this information, almost like you're interacting with me in real life, but you're not. So all of this stuff is happening. You're watching Fright and Fear, car crashes, scary politics, scared for your, you know, robots are going to replace you. This is a lot of stress on the brain. So in that kind of stress, I have observed the pattern is you're going to medicate. It's not logical. We're not logical creatures. Most of our behavior is driven by the subconscious. It just is what it is. So being that that's the way we are wired, why not work with yourself? So if you just understand, create support for yourself. When you're in front of these screens, it is likely you are going to medicate because there's a whole lot of mental, emotional stress that is going on in milliseconds. So you can get into an activity. And one of the things you can do is make a juice or a smoothie, something that's light and that's very easy to digest, that's very, very hydrating for your cells. And it's like easy, not with a whole gazillion amount of ingredients. And so one of my favorite beauty foods is cucumber or the pepino, right? Usually you can get these, and cucumbers can get really, really expensive. I've spent like $10 US for 3 organic cucumbers, right? They're a nice size and they were unwaxed. So that goes to show, and I got those at a food co-op, right? Shout out to the Park Slope Food Co-op. I got those unwaxed, right? So a lot of times we want, when the skin is nice and shiny, this has natural silicone. This is not wax, but that shininess that's inside the skin of the cucumber, that's the nutrients that we want inside of our face and inside of our skin. If we don't want to look all dried out, right? For all my folks, my Caribbean folks, y'all know saltfish, right? So if you look at that saltfish at the fruit and vegetable stand, you'll see that it's dried and it's preserved, right? And traditional peoples use salt to preserve food, right? To draw all the liquid, they draw all the blood, and they dry it out. So think of that. If you're taking in, and even if this is natural sea salt and evaporated seawater, but if you're taking in all of this salt indiscriminately, you're drying your body out. And where's that salt going to go? It can't just escape, right? The salt, if I put it here, right, it's going to escape. But if I'm taking all the salt into my body, it's going to make me retain a lot of water and bloat and water retention. And what does that look like? It looks like fat. And it also hardens the arteries. Even though this is sea salt, even if it's Himalayan salt, even if it's Celtic sea salt. So we're just going to put all this into a perspective, right? So like coming on to do a class. So hopefully this is making sense to you all. So if you're taking in a lot of this, even though it's so tasty, it's addictive. And this is also implicated also in diabetes. So let's not get it twisted. Let's keep it in perspective. Even though it's sea salt, we're taking in too much salt, right? So lots of different experiments that we're going to do so you can find what your sweet spot is. This is like the scientific stuff people don't want to do, but this is one of the reasons why we have so much blind spots, right? So all of this salt that we're eating, it can't escape. So it's going to fill out on the tissues, and you're going to look bloated. You're going to have water retention. On the scale, it's going to measure just like adipose tissue, right? Which is a technical term for what, my students? Fatty tissue. So instead of saying I'm fat and shaming yourself, no, another person, we're not going to lie to ourselves, but perhaps another way to look at it is I'm holding a lot of additional adipose tissue. Does that make sense? So if you've got a lot around your waistline, which is the most unhealthy place to hold a lot of additional adipose tissue, why? Because right underneath the skin, that's subcutaneous fat. But when it's all around the midsection, it starts to get hard, and that's visceral fat. Like if you think of ground meat, that's very dangerous because it starts to wrap around the organs. That is no bueno. And all of that additional adipose tissue around the waistline is a precursor for diabetes and high blood pressure. Is this making sense? So if this is valuable to you, feel free to like, comment. You can also comment at any point respectfully in the comment section. Do feel free to, subscribe and support the channel. Share it with somebody that can use some comprehensive common sense, right? So you can just take the simple information, light bulbs start going off, and you can start to apply it. And that's one of the other take homes I wanted to point out. Create support for yourself. Support is key, because a lot of times we can't see our blind spots, and we could be spending 10, 15, 20 years doing something to get a certain result that could take you 6 months to a year because there are certain blind spots we're not clear on, right? So if an athlete, as a trainer, I get athletes, I get rehab people, I get some folks with certain diagnoses, health conditions. I've seen all kinds of different situations over the years. And so there is some science. There is some science to sports specificity. What you train for is what you look like. What you eat for is what you look like. And you could be eating all the healthy food in the world, but too much food and too much fuel is too much. And many of us are not moving as vigorously as we think we are. We're not burning as much as we think we are. So what can we do? So I love cucumbers, and I have my plant milk bag. What am I dropping over here? Some seeds. I have my plant milk bag over here. And even if you don't have a fancy juicer, I'm going to rinse off a lot of these cucumbers with a pepino. And I'm going to make a quick juice. Right? So a lot of times if you're giving yourself an activity, you're giving yourself something to do, right? Especially if you're in front of the screen, which is why I recommend that while you're watching these videos, this is a great time to create some support for yourself and get into an activity. So what I'm going to do, let me see if I have a nice little bowl. Let me bowl. Yeah, here's a bowl. And I'm just going to rough chop these cucumbers. Now, if you have a Vitamix, the Vitamix can break down most things. But if you have like one of those little Oster or those inexpensive blenders, the blade is not as strong and the motor is not as strong inside of those blenders. So a lot of times you can't break all of this stuff down. So you may want to do a rough chop. The cucumbers is like a staple in my house. And I can smell the cucumber. And then also, I love to look at the seeds. And I have a habit of taking some of the seeds and putting the seeds to the side of anything that I eat. And I will plant them, right? When it comes to tomatoes, especially if you're paying for organic and you're buying it by the pound, even if it's not organic. It's a good lesson if you're working with children So it really make light bulbs go off because you can see how the food is behaving. You'll actually also get some epiphanies and some clarity as to whether or not your food has been tampered with, right? Because if it has seeds, you should be able to put it in the ground. It should be able to grow, right? So this is good to get your critical thinking on, because people can tell you anything. You can read all kinds of stuff on the internet, right? And you may think eating seedless watermelon. I'm not gonna say I've never eaten seedless watermelon, watermelon because I have. However, you get really clear when you start to see how the food behaves. So I think that's one of the benefits of preparing your own food fresh, because especially anybody, but especially as a woman, we pay attention to patterns because our bodies are linked to patterns. You want to see how the food is behaving. A lot of times you're missing all this information if everything is coming out of a package and somebody has prepared all the food for you. So at least hopefully most of your food you're preparing yourself. So I'm just going to take, the blender. So I don't have my Vitamix here. So I have a backup. This is a decent backup. This is actually the NutriBullet blender. So I actually, in my travels, one of my clients, she's the first one I saw years ago get a little mini NutriBullet to travel with. So I recommend it because she had most of my clients have Vitamixes. And she was traveling. She's a good client. She does her homework. So she was taking her NutriBullet in her suitcase. I said, go ahead, girl. And see, somebody she was doing on home, not dieting, but she was like, I really want to maintain what I'm doing, maintain my lifestyle. So she got a little mini bullet and she put it inside of her suitcase. And when they got to the suite where they were staying, which they were staying for a nice long vacation, she was straight. You know, she filled up her refrigerator. See, that's what I'm saying. It's a mindset. It's not a diet. It's a mindset. So I'm going to add a little bit of filtered water to this so this can break down a little easier. Now, this is so simple. And I've had all different types of water filters. So now I'm putting this on in. And I'm also going to add some local lime to it. Now, sometimes I get jazzy, snazzy, and fortunately, I have some herbs out in the yard in my little garden. So some of the herbs that I have right now, I have several, maybe 5 different basils. So sometimes I'll add basil to this. Sometimes I'll add fresh thyme to this. One of my favorites is lemon basil. Ooh, love. So these things may seem so subtle, right? But they make a difference. Also, I'm not adding any sugar. I'm not adding any sweetener. And I'm getting all these fresh herbs in my into my body. The fresh thyme is antibacterial. I could take that thyme. I can put it in my hair for a tea. But again, a lot of what I'm eating is what I'm putting on my face. So sometimes people may think, am I literally putting food on my face? Literally, I am. I will take pulp from my fruits and vegetables and put it on my face. I know that may seem like a lot, or like, who does that? But to me, this seems like the most elementary thing to do. If you're paying all that money by the pound, and I'm someone that even for a small family, I have no problem going to the wholesaler and buying cucumbers, limes, sweet potatoes by the case, which has saved me a lot of money. It's actually saved me a lot of time. In the wintertime, in the city, it's made me a lot more creative. Right? With just, instead of going out and keep shopping and wasting a lot of food inside the bottom of the refrigerator, you start getting really creative with what you have. So that means I know exactly what's in my food. As a chef, I can tell you when you're eating out a lot of times, you don't even know what the heck is inside the food. There's a reason why some of that stuff is so juicy. You can't see how the food is prepared. So all that to say, I can take this as something really quick that I can do. I'm not putting extra salt. I'm not putting a whole bunch of oil in here. So let me just turn this on for a moment. Excuse me 1 second. Yeah, this is like, so this is pretty decent. So if you don't want to shell out for a NutriBullet, you know, I don't do any endorsements. I don't have that, but anyone want to send me some, you know, free equipment. I love juicers. I have a fetish for juicers. But that was like a couple of seconds. So I can strain this very easily through the plant milk bag. So instead of milking cows, we're going to milk the plants. right? So I can pour this right into, I can either drink this like this, and yes, I will, as a smoothie. Now, some people might be thinking, you're going to drink that straight? Yes, I will. Many of us, our palate, and I can smell the cucumbers. Many of us, our palate is not used to fresh food. So if you smoke a lot, or if you smoke cigarettes or other substances, if you drink alcohol, you may be thinking, oh, I'm a social drinker, but you may not realize if these are habits, it affects your palate and your ability to taste. So you may not really be present to the subtle sweetness inside lettuce, inside cucumber. So the food doesn't, you know, you may feel like, this has no flavor because you're always doing dressings, cigarettes, so much sugar and soda, your palate is different. So your palate will change over time. There's so many things that I really did not have a palate for, and my palate has continually changed over time. So some things taste too salty. If you eat too much sea salt, you're going to get addicted to salt, right? A lot of times we're chasing, our tongue is chasing sugar, salt, fat, sugar, salt, fat, sugar, salt, fat. And we don't realize, you know, this is like a serving size of this is 1/4 of a teaspoon, right? Of sea salt. So I'm the avid experimenter, right? I keep all, I'm a scientist. So if you have, let's say this is 1/2 teaspoon. This is 1/2 teaspoon of added salt. This is 1/4 of a teaspoon. That's 1/4 of a teaspoon. That's even if it's sea salt. So we're taking in too much salt. And if you have salt, the added salt, and if you have the sodium, if your food is being prepared outside, chefs are always going to use and add more salt. It flavors food. So we don't realize how much oil and how much salt we're getting in. It's too much salt and too much oil. So you'll see in the experiment, and a part of what we do in Efficient Fitness in those lunchtime classes, we deconstruct some of these little nuances and these blind spots. So when you get clear on what's the amount for you, some of you, I used to be upset when I realized back in the day when I used to eat brown rice, what a serving of brown rice is. And most people don't want to do this part. Most people feel like they don't have the time. But at some point, it's a huge blind spot because you just don't realize how much you're taking in. Now, one of the beautiful things with whole living foods, you're going to get full. Most people, when you're binging or you're eating mindlessly, you're not eating mindlessly celery. You're not eating mindlessly raw broccoli. You're not eating cucumbers like this, right? You're not chewing that much. So that's telling you right there, we're chasing the sugar, salt, fat, and the crunch. So we're just going to reorder our narrative and find some other ways to prepare the food so it becomes enticing and simple. So I can do several things with this. I can strain this into a juice. I can drink this as a smoothie. I can add fresh lime, which I'm going to add. Where my lime go? So where my lime go? Child, my lime is hiding for me. I'm going to add a fresh lime or a lemon. What did I do with my lime? Let me get another one. Okay, so this is lime. Okay. Let's get lime. Okay, good. Let me get a local lime. So I have a local lime here. This looks like one of the Jamaican limes. So this is a local lime. So you'll see all these nuances. It's like light over here. But you see the color? Ooh, this smells so fragrant. So you see how many seeds are in this lime? This is a local lime. A lot of times today, the lime usually that I see stateside usually has a very, very thick skin and has no seeds in it, right? So usually if that's all I had available, common sense for me, I'm a common sense kind of person. I'm very practical. That's what I'm going to use. But it's all these little nuances that we know. This is like 10 times, 15 times more fragrant than usually the limes that we're getting from Mexico. They have like so much, the citrus has so much of a thick skin and it has no seeds. That being said, I will wash those suckers off. I can use the skin. I've used the skin to make, quote unquote, it's not sudsy, but like a shampoo or a cleanser for my skin and for my hair. I've used the lime skin. So again, if you're paying all this money and stuff is imported and you're paying by the pound, a lot of this stuff we're throwing in the garbage, and a lot of this, the skin, all of this has perfumes in it, and this has seeds. Again, I'm the type of person, anything that has a seed, I will put it into the ground so you can see what's going to happen. Again, I think this is excellent for yourself as well as with your children. So you start to get a different perspective on what it is that you're eating. We're not just eating these inanimate objects. You even have people that say that fruits and vegetables have feelings, which I don't doubt. There is a hierarchy of consumption. Everything is going to consume something else. And I would say this, after so many years in nutrition and fitness, hold on one second. I'm not here to tell grown folks what to do unless they pay me to do that. And even then, right? You have to find what your sweet spot is. Right? Now, if I take it in as a smoothie, that's going to fill me up with fiber. I could do both. I can make a little bit of juice and I can drink some of the fiber, right? The fiber is going to fill me up. So I can drink some of this as a smoothie. Totally easy to digest. And again, if it's organic, I'm paying by the pound. So I got a good amount, so don't mind my sleeve. This is so when I put hot water in here, I don't burn my hand. I'm always looking at all the details. So I can take the rest of this and I can put this inside the plant milk bag. And I can have a little juice. So when it's really hot outside, and all this, I'm not using any kind of oil. So I can always take it, just rinse this out with water. So I can take a milk plant. Then I can take the pulp and I can rub it on my skin. So I love stuff like this. Is spend a good quality time with myself, child. So, and it's green. I didn't even have to put any green powder, but if you want to put green powder in that, all of that stuff is nice. But sometimes I just love the simplicity. So look at all this good pulp I have in here. I can do several things. I can even take this and I can put it into a so-called cracker if I want to. And let's see, what kind of glasses do we have here? You know, I like my water and my wine glass. It's one of my favorite glasses of the moment. Some of the green juice there. I know folks be laughing at me with my my little glasses and my cloth napkins and my chopsticks and whatever. But you got to make it, to me, I got to make it attractive for myself. So believe it or not, this is like one ingredient, but I'm going to add the fresh lime to it, the Jamaican lime. I think sometimes we're making things, or we're programmed to make things overly complicated, and they don't have to be. You know, we've got to calm down. I think there's like so much anxiety coming at us through the screens. We got to do this. We got to buy this. It's too much, too much. So I have juice. This is a good amount of juice. Let me see how much. I think this might be able to fit 20 ounces in here. I know this is definitely 20 ounces. So do you realize I'm full? I'm full. There's no salt. There's naturally occurring sodium in here, right? If I'm eating fresh broccoli, tomatoes, I'm getting sodium. But that's not the same thing as extracted sodium chloride. It's isolated, even though it's natural, right? If I take it from the seawater, it's not the same thing, right? So when we're processing foods, right, let's be honest. If you get it unprocessed, usually the only processing that's going to happen to the food, at least the way we're doing over here, is you're going to do the processing. So you can see how the food behaves. So excuse me one second. So look at all this water. I'm constantly drinking water. I have all kind of cute bottles all over the place. So I'm making it easy for myself. Okay. And believe it or not, there's a sweetness. There's a sweetness in the cucumber. There's a sweetness in the lettuce. I have a cucumber beard. But you may not be tasting it, right? Because we got too much going on. We're making it too complicated. So I'd like to invite you to really slow down, taste your food. Also, instead of just gulping everything down, to slow down. Digestion begins inside the mouth. The digestive enzymes start right here in the mouth. So if you're just sipping everything through a straw or you're gulping it, you're bypassing digestion. And with juices, you're not going to get as full. So there's a saying, chew your liquids, right? I mean, swish it around in your mouth so it mixes with the digestive enzymes in your saliva and slow down. Give thanks for the food, because I know I have some cucumbers growing out in the garden. It's a lot of watering, a lot of weeding, a lot of planting. You can do all this work and you can also lose some of the plants. So this is why I'm always encouraging folks to start a garden. This is a great use of your time. Just think for a minute, like how you feel when you're out in the garden versus being in the screen. And I don't want to make anything bad or wrong. We have options. We have choices for how we want to spend our time. But you can be feeling so anxious in front of these screens, right? If you can get out into the garden, or I was talking with some gentlemen that would help me trim some trees today. And putting the trees, chopping them, and then for some of the stuff to go to the compost. Folks are so quick to cut down a tree when a tree is providing shade, and you bald and everything. Then you can't pull the moisture from the environment for rain. So there's a disconnection. This is a long-winded way for me to say there's a disconnection from the energy, not just the food. It's not an inanimate object like a book or a piece of paper. It's energy. It's whole living energy that we're consuming, and the choice of what we're consuming, it's going to make you feel a way. I feel like you connect the dots. You're more engaged in the process. You get a natural respect for what you're putting into your body when you grow something, in particular, something beautiful to look at and something beautiful to eat. It can change your whole demeanor. It can make you sensitive to other creatures. Some people may not want to be sensitive because then it can perhaps make it easier for you to eat certain things. So whatever you want to eat is your BI bubble eye business. I'm not the food police. I'm not here to condemn or judge anyone. I've gone back and forth a million times, well, numerous times over the years. So you'll find your sweet spot on your journey. So I don't think it's necessary for us to police each other. I think perhaps if you find your sweet spot or those core values or principles, it can go a long way to guide you in your food choices. And your body is intelligent. It knows how to fall to a naturally and adjust itself to a natural, healthy weight. When we just stop putting the substances masquerading as food, we stop putting them in, because a lot of things now, and someone that was, I don't know, was greedy. I don't know if greedy, that might even be too judgmental, but just really loving to eat. I still love to eat, but something is different in my mental processing. Certain things just don't occur to me as food. And that is amazing to me. I wondered if I would ever stop being addicted to Little Debbie's and pies and cakes. I could eat big, gigantic Cadbury chocolate bars. And then me wondering why my face is looking like the sidewalk. It's because of what I was eating. And even when I changed my habits, all of that stuff was packed into my body for years. It has to come out. It's affecting my organs. It's affecting my mood. So if we could slow down and be engaged in the process, our whole paradigm of how we're looking at what we're consuming can shift and it can change. And so I invite you, instead of just thinking of weight loss, I like to say weight release. The body knows what to do, right? If we're not seeing the kinds of results we want, if we're not feeling a lot of vitality, it's telling us something about our energy consumption patterns, if this makes sense. So this is some of what we go over in common sense nutrition and efficient fitness, and definitely a big part of what we go over in the cocoon, whether that's small groups or for different women or folks that have decided to take a moment, whether that's 7 days, 14 days, to really do a thorough turning in, to focus on your energy consumption patterns, to get to the root of a lot of our mindless consumption patterns without making ourselves bad or wrong, having a healthy sense of curiosity about why we're doing what we're doing. So we're moving kind of fast, right? So to give yourself some feedback and be unapologetic, I invite you to be unapologetic about creating some kind of support for yourself. It's not a diet. To get some positive, objective feedback about what you're doing in terms of your movement practice, in terms of your energy consumption and your self-care. If you feel like I don't have enough time, I don't have enough resources, I invite you to consider that perhaps that's kind of like it's a skewed formula. That formula doesn't work. We can't continue to feed everyone else at a cost to ourselves at a deficit, right? Even in the aircraft, You know, they say the first person to put the oxygen mask on is yourself, or you will not make it to the end of the aircraft to your children and to other people. So that's a pattern I've observed is just not working. It hasn't been producing the type of results that we want to see. So thank you for coming in and joining me today. Sharing my little quickie hairstyle and some of what we can do to nurture ourselves and really to give ourselves some options to some alternatives to eating mindlessly. I know I've benefited from investing in coaching, also creating support for myself, visual support, auditory support, anything that's going into any of my orifices for processing. You know, support works. Create whatever that looks like. Create some support for yourself. So you're encouraged. If you don't ever have any of your homies, any of your friends, you know, where you're drinking water in a wine glass and making juices together, you know, then it's not fun. When you're having fun and you're open to learning, it's like it's the most natural thing. It becomes enjoyable as a lifestyle. So when people say, I love your lifestyle, I'm not doing anything that other folks can't do. So what's missing? For many of us, it's the encouragement, it's the motivation, it's the support, it's those little blind spots. Oh, it's those little techniques that can save you actually a lot of time and shorten your learning curve. So anyway, this is Body-Culinary. I invite you to make use of this video, perhaps replay it for yourself, maybe early in the morning, because you know, when it early rides a circle over here. Perhaps while either you're decluttering, cutting up vegetables, or as you set out your exercise or your movement practice mat for yourself, you can perhaps even stretch while you're listening to these videos or lay in Shavasana or something. These are ways you can build movement and self-care into your lifestyle pattern, right? Support for yourself. This would be more encouragement for you to go and rest now. My body's not overstuffed. It's super hydrated. I'm getting living nutrition in. And this one last tip. Unless you're taking your juice, and let's say, for example, if you want to make an extra portion, which is a good tip, you can perhaps take one of your bottles. Let's say I got all different kinds of sizes containers. This one I've had for many years. This one can keep water piping hot if I had tea. So I've had these when I worked in the airline industry for years of different sizes. It can also, you can chill one of these and you can put it inside the freezer. And if I was going to make a portion, or especially if I had a small one, a portion of juice, I would drink some and some I would put in here and you would fill it, make sure it's already pre-chilled inside the freezer. And then you fill it up to the top so that you don't have air inside of it. And so then you have an extra portion of juice for either early in the day, the next day, or if you're working from home. When you go to the fridge, you're like, oh, you forgot. You have like a nice juice inside of the refrigerator for yourself. So these are different habits and patterns that I have as a lifestyle. They go such a long way. When people want, I love your lifestyle. These are the little details. These are the little nuances. And this is a lot of what I have put into whole living foods with menus to fit your budget. I thought of all the different things that I would have loved for somebody to have shared with me that could save you like loads of time, like from 30 years. Of so much experimentation and living a natural lifestyle. So these are different tips and things that can shorten your learning curve that you can implement that can become different types of habits for you. So like, comment, subscribe. If you're interested in doing a cocoon or going in for at least 7 days, that's usually in the wee hours. I'm working on some ways that people can do that independently. Even if you do it independently, I always find there's nothing substitutes having a really good teacher and a guide. I've done that for yoga. I've done that for Ashtanga. I've done that for Capoeira. I've always gotten the best when I have sat next to and invested in great teachers and coaches. One of the best investments of my life. I can't even begin to name off all of my coaches. I'm always excited about my teachers and my coaches. I value them a lot because it saves me so much time. That being said, human beings are flawed human beings. Always use your common sense rather than follow people blindly. Because again, I may be a catalyst and a guide. You will have to find your sweet spot. You don't have to be a raw vegan. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I don't even like to say that. It's because we can get very egotistical and become very divisive in different camps. I use these terms as distinctions in terms of knowing what I want in my food and what I don't, right? And if I felt I wanted to eat something different, which I've done many different times, that's what I would do. But this lifestyle works for me. You will have to find your sweet spot. I don't think that food is meant to be something to drive us apart. Food and breaking bread or breaking vegetables together is something that can bring us together. So you can find what your sweet spot is for you. And it will take you a lot of experimentation to find out what that is for you. However, fruits and vegetables, for the most part, are pretty safe. They don't require a lot of dogma. They can fill you up and they make you real pretty. And they really enhance your mood. So that being said, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Welcome. Replay this as some kind of positive support for yourself. Do check out Whole Living Foods in the Hood, the main fit your budget, natural beauty, no products, food preservation, and preparedness. That's a whole workshop. Preparedness, not from cans. If you're living a natural lifestyle, what do you put in a to-go bag in the case of an emergency? Can you flip your different ingredients every which way to Sunday? And then also healthy eating for men. There's a whole webinar. So all of those things you can find on body-culinary.com. If you want to contact me for personal coaching or instruction, if you want to make that kind of investment in yourself, my contact information is there. Info at Body-Culinary. You're welcome to support the channel. Cash App, Kwasa, Peaceful Eating, and all that good stuff. So I will see you all real soon.